All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, welcoming you back to the Rankin Technical College Summer Adventure Academy, and this is the Android App Inventor 2. What I'd like everyone to do right now, please, is to go out and start up a browser. Again, I'd prefer if you use Chrome. And in your browser window, I'd like you to type in what you see on the screen. appinventor.mit.edu/explore/. All right, I'm going to highlight that, and even though I'm here already, in fact, I'll open up a new window. And I'm going to paste that in. Okay? All right. So once we do that, that's going to get us to right here. And we're just about to, I always forget I've got about 15 Gmail accounts, so I always forget which one is mine. So that brings us to here. We want to start creating apps, so that's what we do is we click the button that says Create Apps. And what it does is it may or may not have a default Gmail address for you. Well, that's not the one I want to use anyway. So I'm going to sign into another account, and my account is jpscottappinventor@gmail.com. Yours, I'll explain to you when we get there. All right? So I'm going to click the next button, and as you'd guess, it asks for my password. All right, I put that in and I click next. Your password was changed 2 months ago. Okay, I don't remember what I changed it to, so I'm going to have to pause for just a minute. All right, sorry about that. I was able to go in and successfully change my password. You may get a message like this if it comes up. I would suggest, unless you feel like reading this every time, click the button down here that says Do Not Show Again and Continue. Now, this is what we'll be building later, so don't let that throw you. I've already got copies of everything that I've created. In fact, I've got a lot of copies. So when I go to my projects, you'll notice that I have a lot of different files. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do as a group here is let's just take a look at everything that's on our screen. Your screen will be empty here. Don't let that bother you. If we want to start a new project, we click the Start New Project and we give it a name. We're going to do that in just a minute. If you're working on a project, sorry about that, as I'm taping these, I'm also producing my videos, so when you see that come up, that's what it is. So if you decide you don't want a project anymore, you delete it. You can publish it out to that gallery that I mentioned to you before, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, if we look up here, you'll notice under projects, you've got My Projects, which will give you all of your projects like I have here. Start Project, which is the same as clicking that button. Import Projects, so if you save projects to your own hard drive, you can bring them in here. All right, if somebody else has saved projects for you and given you copies of them, you can do that. You can delete projects, so using that is the same thing as highlighting it and then clicking the delete project here. And there's a few other things that we'll get to as time goes on. All right. Now, one thing we want to do is we're going to want to connect to the emulator. Okay. Now, to do that, you're all going to have to do right now what I'm about to show you. We'll all do this together. And that is, we're going to open up File Explorer, and from the File Explorer, we're going to go to the C drive. And from our C drive, we're going to go to Program Files x86 and App Inventor. Now, if I did that too fast, what I'm saying is what we want to go into here is this particular folder that you see on the screen right now. Again, let me blow it up a little bit size-wise. There it is. So we want to all go to C:\program space files space, then in parentheses x86 \App Inventor. We'll do this as a class, so don't worry about it. And the key file is the one right here that says aistarter.exe. We double click on that. Now that'll allow us to start working on what we're working on. Okay? Now we can go back into our App Inventor. And now we can actually tell it to bring up the emulator, which is what we're going to run. If we wanted to connect to a device, we could choose USB here. We're not going to do that. Sometimes when you're working on the emulator, what will happen is your connection will appear to have dropped. And I'm not sure exactly why that happens, but it does. If that happens, you can try to do a reset connection, which works about 90 some odd percent of the time. If your machine seems to lock up and you go in there and you try to do a hard reset, a reset connection, and nothing happens. You're like, I did this, what you told me to do, I did this hard reset, and nothing happened. Then you may have to do a hard reset, which resets everything. Let's not worry about that, and hopefully that won't happen to us. All right, under Build, this is if you want to be able to save this either to your computer or to create a file, what's called an APK file, which is an Android package file that you could actually copy to your phone or someone else's phone. There is a help system here that you can go to. I'm not going to go into any of that. All right. The My Projects will bring this up. The gallery will bring up. This is the gallery that's available to you where they've got a lot of different free projects. People learn this stuff in different ways. The reason that I'm telling you that is if you decide after you get done with taking this class that you'd like to learn more, you can go out here. And again, I'll make this a little bigger so that you can see it. And I'm also going to upgrade in just a minute. I'm going to come in. Oh, I guess I made it too big. Yes, I did. I'm going to come in and I'm going to go back here to where we had this. And this is the pre-made apps. So what I want, yeah, I know. This is going to look real ugly for a second, but that's okay. There we go. All right. So now that's been updated accordingly. All right. Now, we don't care about that right now. There's a guide here, and I'm not sure, that's got a bunch more documentation in it. Not sure what all that stuff is, to be honest with you. All right. Report an issue. So if you are working on something, occasionally, for some reason, if the machine just stops, the software stops working, what you might see is you might have a little form that comes up and it says something unexpected happens. Do you want to report an issue? And if you do, that's up to you. You can change the language you're using. You can see these are the most of the supported languages: English, Spanish, French, Italian. I see Portuguese in there. I don't know what the rest of them are. All right, and here's where we're logged in as. And from here we can look at our profile or we can sign out. So I'm concerned right now with going in, and I'd like all of us to do this. Let's go to Projects, Start New Project. And we're going to name this let's just keep it all in caps. In fact, let's keep it all in lowercase. It'll make it easier for me because I've got a bunch of projects in there. I don't think I've got any in lowercase. So all underscore American. All underscore American. Now when you're doing that, please don't put a blank space in there because you'll have problems with it. All right, so all underscore American. And should look familiar to you by now because this is the same screen I showed you earlier. Now, what I'm going to show you, I don't want you to do this. But if I wanted to, I could just go and add some buttons. But notice if I try to add another button and put it here, I don't want it to go, I want it to go over here, but it doesn't. They stack 1, 2, 3, which is okay, but that's not really what I want here. So I can get rid of these. I can go over here, all right, and I guess I could do it here and just click. Come on, click delete. Says deleting this component will delete all blocks associated with it. Yep, so that's gone, and that's gone. What I want to do is I want 3 buttons that are right here. And the reason I want to do that is twofold. First, it'll look a little nicer, and second, it'll allow me to show you some of the settings that we have over here. All right, in fact, even before we do that, do you notice how here it says screen 1? We can't change the name of that. That actually stays as screen 1. But what we can change, if we want to, is we could change the app name here, but we don't want to do that. Somewhere in here should be our title, which now says screen 1. Here we can put in blank spaces, so we'll put in all space American, all in capitals, and we'll hit enter. And notice how that's changed. All right? That's the first thing we did. Secondly, the second thing we want to do here is we want to come in and rather than using this user interface stuff, and we're going to use this a lot, I want us to open up layout. And I want us to put in what's called a horizontal arrangement. And just so all you do is you take and click your mouse button and drag over here. You'll see that blue line and let go. That's it. Now I want this horizontal arrangement to take up width-wise my entire screen. Notice it's called horizontal arrangement. I can change its name. I'm not going to right now. I don't care about that. But with this highlighted, again, there's the screen highlighted, but I want horizontal arrangement highlighted. I want to come down here into our properties and change where it says width. It's got automatic. I want to change that to fill parent and click OK. See what happened? It's now the width of my screen. Okay? Now I want to come back to my user interface and I want to put in 3 buttons. A button, another button. I'm going to put it almost looks like it's right on top of the other one. But do you notice now how all 3 of them are on the same row? That's because I did one of those horizontal arrangements. Okay? Well, right now this looks a little icky, for lack of better words, because they're all kind of too too big. So I'm going to go over here and click on my first button, and I'm going to change it from the name of that from button to, we'll just call it, I will click on there, right mouse, how do I rename? Rename, there we go. And I'm going to change it from button 1 to button red. All right. My second one's going to change from button 2 to button white. And my third one will change from button 3 to button blue. Remember, this is our all-American app, so red, white, and blue. All right. Now, for this to work and for us to be able to see it, I'm going to click on here, which is clicking on my screen, and I'm going to change the color, which is now white. I'm going to make it yellow, just for now. You'll understand why in just a minute, but it's now yellow. Okay? So I've got my button red, my button white, my button blue. I can click here to choose, or I can click here. But I'm going to click here to go back to my first button. And I want to change the width of that, but I don't want it to be fill parent. I want it to be a percentage. And I'm going to put in here 32%. All right? Then I'm going to click the next one, and I'm again going to click width, percent, and I'm going to put in 32%. Finally, I'm going to click the last one, and again I'm going to say width, percent, 32%. Doesn't really look any different, but it'll look a little bit nicer. It'll look a little bit nicer when we go to run this. All right. So that's our whole interface. Not a lot in this first program. But what we want to do now is we want to be able to add code for each one of these buttons. All right. Now, if you get ahead of me, it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. People like to learn, and I get that. But I want to show you some shortcuts. So I'm going to do this in a couple different ways. So first, the first thing I'm going to do is it doesn't matter where we are in here, but I'm in the designer right now, but I'm going to click on where it says blocks. And you notice what happens. This changes a lot. Okay? But what I want to do is I want to put in code for my red, my white, and my blue button. So I'm going to click on button red. And it says, wow, it shows me a bunch of stuff. A lot of stuff. But I want to do something when I click that red button. What do I want to do? I want my screen to turn red. So in other words, I want to go to my screen here, and I want the background color. I want to be able to set that. Hear that little clicking noise? Okay, this is how we're building code. So I want to set that color. Well, I want to set it, and if you notice, I got a thing here that says colors. If I click that, if I look enough, let's see, there's red. Okay, so there's my first one. So what that means is when I click the button named red, the color of my screen should turn red. So let's see if it does. I'm going to go back to my designer, and I don't have to do that. In fact, I can stay in the blocks editor. I think I can at least. Let's go back to the designer anyway. This has changed since the last time I was in here, unfortunately. All right, and I want to click Connect Emulator. Now this will take a little bit of time. It's got to go through its process. And again, in the background, that's the stuff that's happening. It's making some calls out to the internet for me. So it says it's starting the emulator. Please wait, this might take a minute or two. And for you, it might even take longer than me because it'll be the first time the emulator will probably be being used on these accounts. Even so, it should take up no more than a minute or so. And even when it gets done here, it might go through some more stuff. So just because it finishes here doesn't mean it's necessarily done, as you notice. When it gets finished, what you're going to see says it's out of date. If you get this message, all right, we do want to update. All right, so we'll click OK. And it's saying it's going out to the internet basically, and it's going to do, okay, it says the update is now being installed on your device. When we're done, we choose done. Don't click open. So I say got it. Again, this may take a couple seconds, but when it's finished, we're going to click done. We're not going to click open. This is what our emulator is going to look like when we get all done. It's supposed to symbolize basically a phone. So yes, I want to install it. Again, it'll take a couple minutes. It's not a real long time. This is a one-time shot, so we shouldn't have to do this more than one time. Again, we want to say done. Don't click open here, click done. All right? And then once this comes up, then we want to click connect again and emulator. Again, it's going through the startup process, and it's got to do the same stuff it did before. Now, unless they come up with a new version of the emulator during the week we're taking this class, Again, what we're doing right now is what I'll call a one and done. We have to do that once, and then basically it'll be set from then on. All right, and there's our emulator. Okay, so notice it's got text for button 1, which was silly. I've got to change that. Let's see what happens when I click this button. See how it turned red? Now these two buttons aren't operable yet. Okay, so I'm going to come back to here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. So instead of saying text for button 1, I'm going to change that down here so it just says red. I'll go to my next one, and I'll have this one, instead of text for button 2, it will say white. And for my third one, instead of text for button 3, it will say blue. All right, so all those are done. Now I'm going to go back to my blocks window, and I could do the same thing we just did. In other words, I could go click here, bring this out, and it would work just fine. But it's more work than I have to do. Instead, I can go and right mouse click on, make sure you're in here, and click duplicate. All right, now I've got two of them, and that's why I'm getting this error, but I want to change this to button white. And I want to change my color here to white. Now I've got two of them done. All right, if I go back to my emulator, now notice I can click red and I can click white. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to again right mouse click, again choose duplicate. And this is for blue. And you can choose different versions of blue. This one looks pretty good here. So again, if I go back to my emulator, red, white, blue, white, blue, white, red, etc. So we have now finished our first application. What I wanted you to get across in this is we first went into the designer. From the designer, we went in, and before we even went to our user interface, we went to layout and we put a horizontal arrangement on our screen. Then in that horizontal arrangement, we added 3 buttons. Then we changed the name of the buttons to button red, button white, and button blue. We also changed both the text on the button, and we set the width of each button to be about 1/3 of our screen size. All right? So we did all that. So we renamed our buttons, etc. Then, we also came in, and for our screen, we changed the title to All American. If we don't want that title to show when we run our application, we could have clicked that checkbox right there. All right. Then we went into our blocks editor, and we brought out the block for red, and it doesn't matter which of these you do first at all. But we wanted to make sure that when we clicked our red button, we wanted to set the background color for our screen to red. And you saw that when we did this, so let me grab this one and I'm going to throw it in the trash. Okay, but I'm going to do it again. Okay, so what did we do there? We went to screen 1 and we found there's a bunch of different stuff you can do here. We wanted to set the screen 1's background color. Now it's not complete because right now we're not setting it to anything. So what we wanted to do was, for in here, we wanted to choose, because we have colors. And there's a red color right there. So we chose that. So again, this says right here, when button red is clicked, set the background color of our screen to red. When button white is clicked, set the background color for our screen to white. And when button blue is clicked, set the background color for our screen to blue. And as you saw when we ran this in the emulator, we now can go in and change this. Now that was a very simple little application. All right. What we'll do in our next application is we'll come in and we'll add some computer speech. Maybe you've done that before where you hear the computer and it sounds very cryptic. What we're going to do is we're going to make another app, but instead of having the buttons in here, we'll have two buttons, but underneath it we're going to have a picture, an image of the boy who cried wolf. And we'll have two buttons. And one will be called something like cry wolf. And when you click it, it will have the computer but basically saying it's the wolf, it's the wolf. And when you click the other one, which will say not really or something like that, it will say just kidding. All right? And you'll notice that even doing that will have, again, we're not writing code, but we'll have very little work that we actually have to do. So I'll be back to create that application for you in just a couple minutes.